You are watching America Trends. I'm Mary Burt Godwin, and you all at home know that I am a big sports fan. This is a sports-themed show. We got Mike Costa coming on later in the show. But first, I cannot wait to introduce you to our next guest. I poached him from the Big Biz Show, from our studio next door, because I love everything he talks about. Paul Epstein is here. Welcome, Paul.
Welcome.
Give you the fist bump.
Yes.
Former NFL and NBA executive, leadership and culture expert, keynote speaker, and best-selling author of The Power of Playing Offense. Right? Did I get it all right?
You nailed it.
I love this concept, power of playing offense, because we talk about this a lot, and I talk about it with my kids. I talk about it with coworkers, is being proactive and being out there and being on the offense rather than always trying to be defensive about everything. But so first, tell me a little bit about you, because our audience at home may not know about you, and then let's talk about your book and all of your awesome tips for business owners.
For sure. So by background, you said NFL, NBA. It was a 15-year journey. So in a decade and a half, I came up through the sales ranks, and here's what a team president taught me very early in my career. In sports, you sell one of two things: hope or results. And so I sold a lot of hope over 15 years, because kind of the black cat story of, in 15 years, if you were to pick a team out of a hat and say, I'm going to root for you for a decade and a half, odds are you're going to make the playoffs half the time, a little above half, maybe below half.
Unless you're a diehard Chargers fan like us.
Yeah, so let's go to those painful depths, my friend. Let's go there.
Yeah.
So one playoff experience in 15 years. So that is why I say I sold a lot of hope. But in a beautiful way, you get to walk through a lot of fire. So you being a sports fan can appreciate this. SportsCenter, they show you the highlights and the lowlights. Yeah. So the highlights are saving a team from permanent relocation in New Orleans. The highlights are transforming a team from 28th in league revenue to second, that ESPN called the worst brand in sports. Sports Illustrated doubles down and says, you're the worst franchise in sports history. I started at the LA Clippers circa 05. It was the Kobe Shaq Lakers, so it was that whole deal.
Yeah, I remember that.
Breaking a Super Bowl revenue record, another highlight. And then let's flip the script. Let's talk about some of those fires. What if you were in charge of company culture and then the NBA locks out? So you literally are in charge of team morale, and there's no team to root for. I'm at the Niners, sales service head. You're in charge of all customer relationships. Colin Kaepernick takes a knee, and you got to pick up the phone and answer those texts and emails.
That's
and
uncomfortable,
so
awkward fires.
Little bit.
Yeah.
So look, I wouldn't be where I am today without any of those moments, memories, events, experiences. They molded what eventually turns out to be this message of playing offense, which is essentially, I realized, when it comes to high performance in this very high achieving environment like the professional sports world, there's two types of people. There are those that play offense, those that play defense. So offense, and you could have this conversation with your family. This is a scalable message beyond business. This applies to every aspect of life. Half of us are on our toes while the other half are on our heels. Half of us have a mindset where we play to win. The other half have a mindset of playing not to lose. So you're never going to fail big, but you're also never going to win big. Then half of us, we operate on our own terms. So even in a situation like a global pandemic, you ask yourself, what do I control, or what can I influence? Because all these other things like environment and adversity and all these external circumstances, you literally have no control over. So why would you allow it to derail your life? Versus you take control of your own terms.
Right.
And now there's purpose, there is passion, there is intent, there is ownership, there is self-awareness. All of these things to mastering, not only eventually leading others, most importantly, leading yourself.
You know, I'm
That's
just going to interrupt here for a second.
Sure.
You think, because in the first part of the pandemic, I was kind of that person that was scared, and I was in my house eating, overeating, and thinking, oh my God, I don't want to get it. And then I thought, I am living defensively here. Like, what can I do to help myself? And I started working out and eating better and getting my immune system boosted and using the time wisely to my advantage, because I thought, well, eventually I'm not going to have all this downtime again, right?
100%.
We always are waiting for that downtime. So I thought, how am I going to maximize this? And I made that shift in my brain, because I think it's more comfortable sometimes, right, to just kind of sit back and
stay on the path,
party, and or be defensive, and or all of the different analogies here. But that was just a small one that came to my mind. But I think that it is helpful in all the situations to kind of say, how am I going to maximize what I have and move forward.
Yeah, it's like if you're at the poker table, like you're going to be dealt. Life deals you a hand. You don't get to tell the dealer, hey, can I get a new hand? You kind of got to play the game out, and then eventually you'll get a new hand. And I think that's also a good lesson for life. But here's a real piece. So you mentioned the power of playing offense. And it is a thick leadership playbook because it's jam-packed with a lot of activities and exercises about how you can be your best self and how you can scale culture and all of these things that I know we're going to get into. But here's how it comes back to the pandemic. So I was a pretty sought-after keynote speaker coming into the pandemic. And literally, almost a triple-digit number of stages were awaiting me in the calendar year of 2020. And then, poof, live events are gone.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about somebody's livelihood being taken away. Had I had a defensive mindset, the pity party might still be going because stages are still transitioning back.
Yeah.
But that happens March 2020. April 2020, I make a decision to write a book. By June of 2020, a 90-day sprint to play offense and write the power of playing offense.
Yeah.
And that's just, I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back. I'm saying this because everybody listening in can apply that same insight into their lives by just having an offensive mindset. Sometimes it's a pivot or a reinvent. Sometimes it's a step back to take 10 forward, but you're always moving because you never know what hand you're going to get dealt.
Right. Well, and we've actually interviewed a lot of people on this show that utilize that time, and they did have to pivot, and they had to say, how am I going to create? And even I work with the Sully Band, so you know Sully from that show. He has a band, and we pivoted. We had no gigs, right, in person. All of a sudden, we said, hey, we've got camera equipment here. Let's do live stream events, and we live streamed a bunch of concerts.
There you go.
And it was just this. We all kind of had to pivot and shift and use that. I think we overutilized that word a little bit.
Totally, yeah. I know there's a lot of P words going on right now, but anyways.
So let's talk about some other things. Well, your book has 50 plus ways to play offense. Can you tell us 1 to 2? Give us a sneak peek.
Of course. So number one thing for anybody listening in is the Latin definition of inspire is to breathe life into. So I want everybody listening to think about what breathes life into you. Is there a word? Like for me, it would be courage. Because when I lost my dad at 19 and I'm an only child, so my mom instantly goes from parent to partner. And I saw the way that she showed up with courage the day I lost him, and the next day, and the next day, and the next. And she breathed courage into me, and it's never left. So that's my story, and that's why courage is something that inspires me. I now want to pass the baton for everybody to take that intentional time out, this self-awareness exercise, to ask yourself, what breathes life into you? And when you can nail it into one single word, you now center your life around that word. So as an example, how can I show up in a more courageous way with my team, with my spouse, with my partner, with my kids? And you just literally drill that value and create these actions and these behaviors and make decisions through that word. And that would be one of the 50 ways. That's a leadership of self example. The book is chock full with leadership of self, team, and others. And I really try to organize it that way.
Can we drill down into the word courage? Because
Please.
I think that a lot of times, courage, maybe people think I need to act, I need to go, I need to push. Sometimes courage is sitting back and listening. Sometimes courage is actually
very true.
Taking in what's happening and taking a moment to breathe and not reacting, not being defensive, right? And sitting back in the pocket and being like, okay, because I feel like, courage, it's just a hard word to wrap our heads around sometimes. And it feels intimidating or scary or whatever it may be. So maybe are there tips like how we can assess what courage means to everybody?
Yes, I'm so glad you brought this up because the world probably knows just a super iconic thought leader in Brene Brown. And she, to me, when I think of courage and who has brought the most value to that subject matter expertise, as I'll call it, so she's got a couple things to her. I think she's the queen of courage, which some folks would say bravery as well. Also the queen of vulnerability. Yes, that's where I was going. No, but that's where I was going next. And so, okay, there's 3 words that to me prove the point of what you just said. And they are 3 words that CEOs rarely use, but if they did, it could empower the entire organization to be more courageous. And it goes back to what you said. I don't know. When a CEO has the courage to not pretend like they have the answer. And maybe they do have the answer, or they think they have the answer, but to, instead of telling their team what to do, they say, folks, I don't know. what do you think? So now they turn themselves into empathetic listeners. So that is an example of you don't need to be go, 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 take action, take action. Sometimes courage in the moment, the vulnerable side of you says, I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's just one way.
And opening yourself up to what's on the other side, the other story. There is a second story. There are other people that have another idea, and then saying, oh, maybe I'm not always right. Maybe I can get more from the team. And the vulnerability, that is such a key word. I'm so happy that she brought that to our consciousness and our dialogue that we have in our country. And we got to take a break soon. So will you stick around for another segment?
Of course, let's do it.
So I've got Paul Epstein here from The Power of Playing Offense. I am so excited to be chatting with you. So everyone at home, stick around for more with Paul Epstein right after this. We've got a sports-themed episode today. So stick around for more of America Trends, and we'll be back right after this. Trends. I'm Mary Burt Godwin, and look what I got during the break. A copy of this. You weren't joking. This is a hefty book. I told
you could do some curls.
Some presses with this. We got Paul Epstein here. He is the author of this book, The Power of Playing Offense. You are a former NFL and NBA business executive, turned keynote speaker, published author, best-selling author, and you have a lot of great tips. Before the break, we were talking about this concept of courage, leading into the concept of vulnerability. Yeah. It's not the easiest word to say, but Brene Brown has brought that kind of to the forefront of the conversation these days. And I think business owners and leaders and entrepreneurs and really anybody who kind of embraces that concept, it's really helpful. Mm-hmm. Before we talk about some of the other tips that you have, I just wanted to wrap that circle up a little bit about courage and bravery. And if you had any other tips for people on how to figure out what that means to them.
Yeah, so the tip would be, I think there's 3 layers of how we show up every day, whether leaders in business or life. Head, heart, hands. And to me, when you can align and connect all of those different layers, that's your most authentic self. And authenticity is really the portal to all these wonderful things, including courage, that we can tap into. But think of it like this. The pre-pandemic leader, as I'll call them, everybody thought they had to be the smartest person in the room, and they thought the offensive mindset was all about taking action, which we've already discussed in the past few minutes here. I think one of the H's was missing, and the pandemic has shined a light on the good leader has become great, the bad leader has become worse because it was a question of heart set. So we thought it was all mindset. It's heart set. That is the key to tapping into courage, because now you are expressing levels of empathy. You are listening. You are recognizing. And Mary, maybe you can vibe with this. Have you ever done 100 things and 99 were right and you never heard a word? But then you did that one thing wrong and you never heard the end of it?
So I can very much.
There you go.
This. Yeah.
And that is the life. So pillar 3 in the power of playing offense is salute the long snapper. What I just described, long snapper being the position in football, but it's the everyday role player in life. Because we're not always going to show up as that quarterback. That's not always who we're supposed to be in the moment, in that setting, in that environment.
Okay, wait. This is a whole conversation of maybe that's not who we're supposed to be. Because I think there's so many people out there. I know I've grappled with what position am I supposed to play? People want to be the shining quarterback or the star. But you're right. There's the long snappers. There's all these other positions that are so important and key, and they help the whole team work.
Yes.
But it's hard to think, it's hard to realize maybe that's not my position over here. Maybe I'm supposed to be here.
Yeah. And also you can have different hats in different positions in different settings. So you can be in a positional leadership role at work, and as soon as you get home, your kids will quickly remind you that not so fast, my friend. And so that shows you how we need to compartmentalize what role we play, and that comes back to self-awareness. So you talked about courage, and that's really just being courageous enough to have the humility to say, who do I need to be in this moment? How do I need to show up? How can I best serve the people around me? Because perhaps I need to be that long snapper. And until long snappers feel like they have a seat at the table and they feel like they matter and they feel like they belong, a lot of societal issues we're dealing with right now, as well as a lot of business issues we're dealing with right now, are because people don't feel like they matter. They don't feel valued, seen, or heard. And it's because courage turned into this bravado thing versus courage could actually be, I'm going to take a back seat here. I'm not even riding shotgun. I'm in the backseat. I want you to drive. That takes courage.
And I want to listen, because you know, you just said something that people are feeling maybe not heard or undervalued, but it's not necessarily my fault. It's the fault of what's going on. So I feel like people get defensive and feel
100%.
like they need to fix the situation or they're the ones at fault, but it's not really their fault. But how can we work together so that you don't feel that way or this problem isn't occurring? It's a team effort, right?
Yeah.
So many things here.
And I want to put a bow on that too, because you talked about great leadership and you talked about what we can do, how we can show up. So here's something to share with the audience. So I've done this now for tens of thousands of people. And the question is to think of the greatest leader you've ever had, any walk of life, a parent, a coach, a mentor, maybe it is somebody in business. And what did they do? Why are you thinking about them right now? And I kid you not, Mary, after tens of thousands of a sample size, there is a usual suspect that finishes in the top 5 answers about 90% of the time. By far and away, there is a gap between first and second place on this response. And the number 1 response is listening. Because the people that have genuinely listened to you over the course of your life, it is so rarely practiced, but yet so in demand. That is the key.
Appreciated.
Exactly right. Why would it always end up in the top 5? Because people love when they feel listened to, and unfortunately they have that feeling way too rare.
Infrequently. Yeah, I agree with you. So that's one of my biggest things too. And I think it was during the pandemic, I thought I want to be a better listener, a better learner, instead of thinking I always have it right. Although I do always have it right. Not Jason. Okay, I want to talk about your tips for being a better leader in 2022 specifically. You had this on your Instagram feed at Paul Epstein Speaks on Instagram, right? So I clicked on it and I liked a lot of the things I was reading. So maybe we can touch upon 1 or 2 of those things that you had specifically for 2022. There's your handle right there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the things in 2022, a lot of these are tried and true, you could say universal, whether pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, during the pandemic. But let's talk about what's most relevant right now. And you actually just touched on one a few moments ago. When I tie the core value of curiosity to be a superpower that we need to be flexing real hard in 2022, and if I could simplify that, we were trained and molded and perhaps raised to be interesting. So think about it. Where did you go to school? Is it interesting? What brand do you work for? Is it interesting? It's kind of this supermodel pageant, right? It's this beauty pageant. What if the mission was, instead of trying to be interesting, you were interested? So be interested over interesting.
Dropping science right now. This is good stuff. Everyone at home, this is good stuff. Be interested instead of interesting.
That's it. It's the same concept with chasing significance over success. So success is all those things I said, that where you went to school, where you work for, that's certainly, I'm guilty. I chase success hard. And let's use the book as an example. Success is, I become a best-selling author. It happened, the book launches last day of March in 2021, April 1, boom, best-selling author. I kid you not, Mary. I thought it was this pinnacle and this peak and like life was just about to take off. And the really weird part about it was within 24 to 48 hours, the magical feeling, gone. It expires. It is so short-lived. And now, without getting too geeky about this, it's because the dopamine that comes in our body, we get hits in the journey. We think it's all about the climax. It's actually the hits along the journey that fuel us. But that goes back to when it's about ourselves, like, oh, I'm a best-selling author. That's success. What if it was significance? Because significance is serving others. So now, it doesn't really matter if you're a best-selling author. If you're a best-selling author, you can impact more people. You can inspire more lives. You can step into your purpose. And that is significance, and that is the fuel.
I love it. This has been awesome. I hope you'll come back because
of course,
I'm stealing you from Sully all the time now.
Done.
You're my guest on America Trends. Thank you so much for being here. Paul Epstein Speaks on Instagram. Paul Epstein, paulepsteinspeaks.com is your website. Yeah. And his book, The Power of Playing Offense. And we are America Trends, and we'll be back with more sports with Mike Costa right after this break. You can find us at America Trends TV on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We'll see you right back right after this.